Good morning. Welcome back to Bhagavatam Roundtable. Today is Motivational Monday. Om Aganati Marandasya Ganangana Salakya Chaksurun Militam Yana Tajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Napakaramayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Cha Sirupam Sagatatam Sahagana Raganata Vitam Tam Sadevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamani Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskata De Sadhani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Naratubam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tito Jayodya Nishta Prayashu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Atamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Nigamaka Paruragaritam Param Shukamakaramita Dravi Samatam Pibata Bhagatam Rashamara Mohora Hore Sikabhugi Babakaham Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Good morning, Govinda. Please accept my obeisances. Prashant, good morning. Anjali, good morning. Joe, good morning. And to anybody else who subsequently joins us as well. Sundari Priya, good morning. This is Motivational Monday, in case you missed it. I think so named by Anjali, who's now giving us a bunch of smiley face emojis right now. So we're back for another round of the Bhagavatam Roundtable series of discussions. Our verse is the 30th verse in the second chapter of the first canto. Saivayam sasagraje bhagavan atma maya sadasat rupaya chasho guna ya gunayo vibhu. In the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. Purport here by Prabhupada. Good morning, Rupa Manjari. The position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected, therefore, by the qualities of the material modes. His existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord. In today's talk, we're going to bring in a lot of quotes from Prabhupada's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And you'll notice beautiful, beautiful turns of phrase. He had such a wonderful command of the English language. And of course, he lived 100 years ago, so they were just a lot more intellectually equipped in those days. So it says that the whole material world is based on cause and effect. For everything that we see, it was preceded by a cause, and that cause was the effect of a previous cause, and so on and so forth. However, in this purport, Prabhupada says, and I think again this is the language of Bhaktisiddhanta, that Krishna is the cause of the causal and effectual energies. In other words, cause and effect is caused by Krishna. So that means basically that Krishna is a step removed from this material world. He's a step removed from the cause and effects of this material world. Whatever is going on causally and effectually in this material world, Krishna is not part of that. He's apart from everything, the actions and reactions of this material world. In other words, he hasn't got a tinge of materialistic qualities about him. He's not in any way tinged or affected by the material modes of goodness or passion or ignorance. Rather, he is in a category all by himself. He is all spiritual, and he has nothing to do with the qualities of this material world. And this is explained, right, in the relative beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 6th verse, where Krishna says to Arjuna, Ajab Pishana Vyayatma. In other words, I am unborn. Don't think that because I'm standing before you and I have a human form that I was packed up in a womb for 9 months. Don't think that my appearance here is explained by the laws of cause and effect or by the entanglement of karma. That's not the case. My appearance and walking the earth and ultimate disappearance have nothing to do with the causality of this material world. Why? Because I'm Atma, I am imperishable, I'm eternal. Not only that, but Bhutanam Ishvaro Pishan, I am the Lord of all the creatures in the material and the spiritual worlds. Prakritim Sham Adistaya Sambhavami Atma Maya. And if there's a theme for today's talk, it is Atma Maya. We've heard this. It's often a part of many of the verses in Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. Atma Maya. Sometimes Prabhupada is translated as the sweet will. In other words, Krishna is not forced to come down, anything to do with cause and effect of this material world, but the mystery behind his appearance and his descent can only be explained in terms of his own sweet will. In other words, he's not caused. His appearance is not caused. It's causeless. And to the extent that he takes the trouble to leave the eternal self-effulgent spiritual world and come to this material world, which we've pretty much been systematically trashing for thousands of years, indicates that the reason that he's coming is causeless, and the reason that he's coming is to show mercy and try to extricate his parts and parcels from this world of birth, death, disease, and old age. And therefore, it's a mission of mercy. So Krishna's appearance is explained by Atma Maya, or in other words, the causeless mercy of the Lord. When we give tours here in Spanish Fork, we get a lot of tourists. We're just 3 miles off of I-15. So all the northbound traffic from LA and Vegas going to Salt Lake and Yellowstone, as well as the southbound traffic from Utah to Vegas and Los Angeles, they pass within 3 miles of our temple here, and we're visible from the freeway. Plus, we have a big billboard on the southbound I-15. We have another big billboard on the northbound I-15, and each one of them say Krishna Temple, next exit. So we're fortunate in that the temple is bustling 7 days a week with visitors and tourists who are just doing a quick off and on again from the freeway, people from all over America and all over the world. And often when I bring them before the altar, our Krishna here is made of black marble or granite. Basically, they ask, why is Krishna blue? And I tell them that Krishna is Sarva Karana Karanam. He's the cause of all causes. He causes everything. So people ask, well, if God causes everything, who causes God? And the answer is Atma Maya. Nothing causes God. The definition of God is that he causes everything, but nothing causes him. And in fact, in answer to the question, why is Krishna blue or why is Krishna blackish? Every color comes from him. He's the source of all qualities and all colors. For instance, Lord Chaitanya is yellow, Ram is green, and so on and so forth. He has many emanations, he has many avatars, and they represent all the spectrum of colors of the rainbow. But the reason that he's bluish is because he's bluish. I can't explain it to you in terms of the causality of this material world. The only explanation for the color that Krishna chooses for his original form, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is that it is his own sweet will, or it is Atma Maya. It is not caused by any combination of material elements, but it is causeless. So Krishna's color, Krishna's descent, Krishna's form, Krishna's eyes, Krishna's feet, Krishna's hands, Krishna's decoration, they're all in that category of Atma Maya. They are causeless. In other words, they are as they are because of his own sweet will. Om Tat Sat. So Krishna says to Arjuna, Ajo Pishana Vyatvad Bhutanam Ishvara Prakritim Samadhisaya Sambhavami Atma Maya. I appear to you as an unborn, imperishable, eternal, infallible, living being who is the Lord of all creatures, and I appear before you as a causeless, living being, eternal. And interestingly enough, just a couple of verses later, Arjuna asked the question of Krishna, well, Krishna, you're my cousin brother. You were born just the other day along with me. I'm a Pandava, you're a Yadava. We're related from a bodily point of view. And at that point, Krishna says, Bahuni me vyati tani, janmani tavajana, tani hambeda sarva nitham peda parantapa. Krishna says to his friend and companion Arjuna, both you and I took many births. However, the difference between me and you is that I remember all of them and you did not. Us mortal souls take birth because of the laws of cause and effect. And because we're entangled in laws of cause and effect, our bodies are the results of causality, our bodies are the results of our past karma. And as such, they're material, the nature of these material bodies, earth, air, fire, and water, is that they're inert, they're unconscious, they don't have any self-awareness per se, they're always changing, cells are dying and being reborn. The body I have today is not exactly the same body I had yesterday. Tomorrow's body will be slightly different. The bodies are composed of ignorance. They're always in change. They're always in flux. Therefore, I find it hard to remember what I was doing this time yesterday. I'll tell you what I'll be doing this time tomorrow, which is giving the Bhagavatam class, but I have to pause and I have to think and I have to reach into my memory to recall, if I can even do that, what I was doing this time yesterday, because my body's changed. And if you ask me to dredge up recollections from when I was 5 years old or 6 years old or 10 years old, very difficult, because every 7 to 10 years, all the cells of the body change and are replaced by new ones. So since the time I was in my infancy, and now I'm 73, I've had 6 or 7 totally different changes of bodies. Hence the forgetfulness which is inherent in the living being. But Krishna says, although I have incarnated with you, Arjuna, you are my eternal friend and companion, and we come again and again and again as Nara and Narayan, because my body is causeless, my body is not as a result of karma. I remember all of those previous incarnations, whereas you do not. And so the living being is subject to forgetfulness, and the Lord in his eternal, spiritual, imperishable body never forgets. And that's why, even though historically we read in the Mahabharata and the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna spent 125 years on the planet when he descended from the spiritual world 5,000 years ago, we never see a picture of Krishna in old age. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita in approximately the 90th year out of the 125 years of his manifested pastime, but he certainly doesn't look like a 90-year-old person. On the cover of the Bhagavad Gita, you see him driving the chariot of Arjuna. He looks like 16, 18, not even 21, and yet that was his 90th year that he'd manifested his spiritual form on the planet. So Atma Maya refers to the Lord's causeless mercy. There's another aspect of the Atma Maya, the causeless form of the Lord, which is described in Lord Brahma in the Brahma Samhita. And we sing it every morning in all the Krishna temples at the greeting of the deities. Anyanyi yasya sakalendra driti vanti pasanti panti kalyanti charam jaganti ananda chinmaya shadujvala vigrahasya govindam aripurusham tamaham vajami. In that causeless spiritual body, there's no differentiation between the senses. This body that I have as a result of cause and effect and as a result of my karma, the nose can only smell, the ears can only hear, the eyes can only see, the tongue can only taste, the fingers can only touch. Those are the limits of this body within cause and effect of this material world. But the Lord's body, not being caused by any combination of material elements, any one sense can perform the full-fledged functions of any other sense. That means when you offer food to the Lord and say, Namo Mahavanaya Krishna Prem Budayate, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya, you offer the food to the Lord. Simply by hearing your prayers, he tastes the offering. By seeing you bow down and put the plate of bhoga on the altar, by seeing it, he tastes the food. He doesn't have to masticate. He doesn't have to come down and chew it. He can eat with his ears. He can speak with his nose. He can see with his mouth. There's no difference between the inside of Krishna's body and the outside. We're a part of Krishna. We're like a spark of the divine. However, we are embodied. We are surrounded by and entrapped by earth, air, fire, water in the form of this body. And so there's a difference between my inside and my outside. My inside's eternal, and my outside is all too temporary. It's all too fallible. And so forgetfulness is inherent in my material world experience. Also, the limitations of my senses is inherent in my material experience. I cannot be said to be one undifferentiated living being, but rather I'm marginal. I'm spirit inside of matter. I'm a spirit having a material experience in this body. But that is not the case with Lord Krishna. Again, in the Brahma Samhita, Advaitam Achyutam Anantam Anantarupam Ajam Panara Parashano Vinamsha Vedashu Durlabam Adarabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Maripurisham Tamahang Bhajami. Although he has millions and millions of uncountable forms, in terms of his plenary expansions, his Vishnu expansions, his Shiva expansions, they're uncountable. They're innumerable, like motes of a dust going through a sunbeam on a sunny day. There are Ananta Rupam. There are unlimited, uncountable forms of the Lord emanating from him as his plenary portions. And yet at the same time, he remains one, the original. Sometimes people say that Krishna is an incarnation or an avatar of Vishnu. That is incorrect. That is erroneous. It is from that Advaita, that indivisible, eternal singularity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Triyam Bhagavan, Krishna, from whom millions and millions and millions of Shivas and millions of Brahmas and millions of Vishnu comes. And having come from him, the Vishnu and the Shiva emanations are worshipable. They're just as powerful in most respects as Krishna. But the differentiation is that from one indivisible, unlimitedly potent Krishna, you get millions and millions of avatars and expansions. But however millions of Vishnus or Shivas or Brahmas you have, you cannot get from them one single Krishna. And therefore he is the unlimited, undivided source, fountainhead of everything. And as such, he is Achyuta. He's imperishable. He's infallible. And then it says, Ajam Panana Purusham. Panana Purusham means the oldest person. Krishna is the oldest person. He existed before the sun, the moon, the stars, Shiva, Brahma, any of the demigods. He existed before them. And yet, because his body is Atma Maya, it is not the result of cause and effect. It is not the result of karma. He is Navayovanam Cha. He has always the hue of fresh, blooming youth about him. We age. We prefer not to. We'd all prefer to arrest our development, our physical development at 16. That's why we call it Sweet 16. But against our preferences, we're pushed. We reach 16, then we're pushed to 21, then we're pushed to 30, to 40, to 50, to 60, to 70, and then we're pushed out the door at the time of death. So our desire is to remain fresh and youthful, but because we're not in control of time and matter, we don't have the power to arrest time and to suspend the action of time on this material body. So unlike Krishna or God, we're pushed to old age, just like even Lord Brahma and the demigods themselves are mortal. But Krishna, there's no such action of time and matter on him because these are his energies. The energies do not control the energetic source. The energetic source controls the energies. Time and matter are just like puppets to which Krishna pulls the string. And therefore, although he spoke the Bhagavad Gita in the 90th year of his manifested pastimes, he never was affected by the action of time on matter, because he doesn't have a material body. And for him, time in terms of past, present, and future doesn't exist. There is only eternal time in the present. Now that body, which is causeless and is not in any way, shape, or form within the purview of this material world and its action and reactions, is impossible for an embodied living being to understand. Even if you do yoga, lifetime after lifetime, penances, lifetime after lifetime, you read the scriptures, lifetime after lifetime, still, bahunam jammanamante, gyanavamam prapadyate. Takes many, 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 many lifetimes to get an even inkling of the differentiated nature of Krishna's spiritual body. And even then, it's only insofar as the Lord reveals himself. We cannot reach him with material eyes and material senses and material brains. But at any time, again, according to that same Atma Maya, that same sweet will, the Lord can penetrate into the material creation and reveal himself to us. Doesn't mean that by coming inside of the material creation, doesn't mean that by revealing himself to our material eyes and our material senses that he becomes material. Doesn't mean that he assumes material senses himself, but it just means that being anti-material or super-material or the source of matter, he can appear within matter at any time in his original self-same spiritual form. So in this verse by Lord Brahma, the word Advaita means indivisible truth, who is knowledge absolute and who has no limitations as far as coming and going in this material world is concerned. Therefore, with the material mind and material senses, you can exert yourself for millions and millions of lifetime and never access the spiritual form of the Lord. However, if you do him service, if you serve one of the Lord's pure devotees, the Lord becomes pleased, and then that Lord, who is impossible to attain through yoga, through philosophy, through austerities, through charity, he becomes pleased with you. And then, who is very difficult, impossible to achieve, he is very easily achieved. Atma Bhakto. Durlabham means difficult, impossible to achieve, but Adurlabham means very easy to achieve. Atma Bhakto, through the unalloyed devotion of the soul. So Advaita means that though there are myriads of avatars which emanate from him as his subjective integrated portions, and then millions and millions of small infinitesimal jivas emanating from him as jiva tattva, or separated spiritual particles, in spite of all that effort of creation and emanation and outflow, still the original Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is undiminished. The word used here, and I think this is Bhaktisiddhanta's terminology, is that in spite of all the stupefying, incomprehensible to our brain, acts of creation of millions and millions of worlds and universes, all of which are popularized and populated and civilized, the Lord himself remains intact in his material, undivided, whole spiritual form of perfection. And then on top of all of that, he enters into the material creation periodically as if a historical personality, and he walks amongst us. He's written about, he's chronicled as if a historical personality. But don't make the mistake of thinking that he is like us. We have a beginning, a middle, and an end so far this material body is concerned. You visit the tombstones in the graveyard. There's a date of birth on every single tombstone, and there's a date of death on every single tombstone. There may be some tombstones that have been paid for and set up and are waiting for their their namesake to pass away. So there's not at present a date of death carved on that tombstone, but you can count on it. You can bet the saloon, you can bet the bank that will come in due course of time. But even though Krishna comes within this material world, even though he appears to have a human-like form, don't make the mistake of thinking that he's part of the causality of this material world. That form has no beginning. It has no end. It is eternal. Even though he has a date of appearance 5,300 years ago, he has a period during which he maintained, in which he stayed here, he sojourned here. And then there's a date after which he disappeared. That does not mean that he took birth and that he died like ordinary living beings. Example is given, you may be looking out a window of a building and someone walks across your vision. Now, if you were very foolish and primitive, you would think they were born on the left-hand side and they died as they passed out of my vision on the right-hand side. But any intelligent person knows that they had their existence before they appeared before you within your vision, and they will continue to have their existence after they've disappeared from your vision, that you just saw a little slice of them through that window. Similarly, although the Lord appeared 5,300 years ago and he disappeared 125 years later, actually he is eternal. He himself is aja, without appearance or without disappearance. He's without origin, and yet he is the origin of all creations within this material and this spiritual universe. And even though he's the oldest person, he's still in the full bloom of youth. Now, the fact that he's the oldest person and he's young would be materially contradictory, isn't it? Because as young people, I can't speak anymore as a young person. I'll speak about young people, of which I was one 50 years ago. But young people are very attractive, extremely comely. They have the opulence of beauty. And yet, we don't often find in a beautiful young 16-year-old boy or girl a lot of deep, mature intelligence. You just don't expect it. They don't concur. They don't intersect. Beauty and wisdom are generally mutually exclusive. It's only when you're older and less good looking, you have wrinkles, that you've learned some valuable lessons in life. So in the material world, we don't find beauty and we don't find wisdom intersecting. But God is that personality who resolves all contradictions. There are no contradictions in him. In him is beauty as well as wisdom. He looks naive, he looks innocent. He's got his beautiful lotus-like face and his twinkling eyes. But at the same time, don't be fooled by a pretty face. He knows everything. He created everything. Vedaham samadhitani. He knows past, present, and future. He knows everything. When people seek the Krishna deity, they often ask, who's she? Because he's the most beautiful. And beauty is a feminine quality. We don't generally call a man beautiful. We call a woman beautiful. And so when people first see the Krishna deity, they assume that because of his exceeding beauty, it's a female, and so they say, who is she? But and beauty and feminine beauty, as well as masculine strength, are also generally not found together. If you see a woman who has big muscles and a lantern jaw and all, generally we don't think of that woman as beautiful. In fact, sometimes we might think the opposite. But Krishna is that supreme personality of Godhead with a causeless spiritual body in whom reside what would normally be the contradictory qualities of beauty and strength. Although he looks feminine, effeminate, he's the source of the hurricanes. He's the source of the thunderbolt. He's the source of everything that's powerful and strong. He created the lion. If you give me some emojis, I'll give you a poem by William Blake about how this apparently superficially looking effeminate Lord is also the source of power and ferocity. So I'm waiting until I see some emojis there. I'll take a sip of licorice tea in the meantime. You guys can do better than that, can't you? Come on, let's have a little interaction here. A little give and take, quid pro quo. That's the spirit here, okay? So in case you think that Krishna is just a weak girly, here's a poem by William Blake to that same Krishna of whom people ask, who is she? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye framed thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could frame the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hands and what dread feet? In what the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What dread anvil, what dread grasp dare thy deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? So in that causeless Atma Maya spiritual body, we find resolved those qualities which are normally contradictory, not to be found in combination in this material world. In that form, we find unlimited wisdom and youth. We find unlimited strength and almost effeminate beauty. He resolves all apparent contradictions in this material world. And therefore, the question is asked, how can we realize with our limited faculties the unprecedented existence of the unlimited Lord? And again, I think this must be Bhaktisiddhanta's verbiage. The limited intellectual function of the jiva is always contaminated by the influence of time and space, and is therefore not in a position to shake off this limitedness. I think that deserves a few cheers for Bhaktisiddhanta. Isn't it the lyricism, the beauty of the way that he describes the unlimited Lord? I think that's worth another round of emojis. Don't you agree with me? And while you're thinking of hitting your keys there, let me just repeat these words. They're so insightful and so lyrical and so beautiful. This is our Param Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta. How can the jiva, the particle of Krishna, realize such unprecedented existence? The limited intellectual function of the jiva is always contaminated by the influence of time and space, and is therefore not in a position to shake off this limitedness. Wow, my mind is just, wow. I mean, aren't we so fortunate to be heirs to this lineage of spiritually realized and articulate gurus? Can't imagine. Just take a moment to consider and contemplate our good fortune. So therefore it is said that those who think that the Supreme Lord appears in different forms by accepting a body made of material elements are just plain dead wrong. They have an imperfect vision. They don't understand something that we call the internal potency of the Lord. The question is asked in the Vedic literatures, where does the Lord stand? Where is the Lord situated? And the reply is that he's not standing, he's not situated on the material energy, which is external to him, which is by nature inert and unconscious. No, he stands on a different energy altogether, which is not the external, not the material, but the internal. And when he appears within the material world, he appears Atma Maya, by a self-same internal potency. Therefore, the appearance of the Lord and our appearance are not under the same circumstances. We have wide experience of the external or material potency. You agree with me? Since millions and millions of incarnations, up, down, Brahmanda, Brahmin, Kono, Bhagavana, Guru, Krishna, rotating up and down from higher planets to lower planets throughout all the various species of life since time immemorial, throughout hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of incarnations. Would you agree here that we have wide experience of the external or the material potency? Yes, we all have PhDs in matter. We all have PhDs in ignorance, illusion, madness, birth, death, disease, and old age. So go ahead and put a PhD behind your name. Yeah, we have wide experience of the external material potency. But what experience do we have of the internal potency of the Lord? What experience can we have? We originate from the internal potency, but we allowed ourselves to be overwhelmed by the Lord's other external potency, and therefore our position can be summed up: we're marginal. We're not matter, but we're conditioned by matter. We're conditioned by birth, disease, and old age. However, when we become self-realized, when we awaken our Krishna consciousness by serving a self-realized soul, we come to realize that we are not byproducts of the external potency of the Lord, but rather we are children of the Almighty God. We have His DNA. We come not from matter, but we come from spirit. Now that human form of life, which during its entire duration makes not a single inquiry about the nature of self as apart from the actions and reactions of this material world, that is a human form of life which is squandered, which is wasted. Nirvita tarshaya ipagiya manam bhavoshoro chotomana ka utamashoka vanada paman baraja tabina pashukna. Who can live the entire span of this rare and valuable human form of life without a single time making an inquiry into the nature of the spirit soul and the source of the spirit soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Who can do that? Who can live the entire span of the human form of life totally in darkness, totally in the shadows? And it says, Nirvita tarshaya upagiyamana. Only those who kill animals and eat their flesh and who kill their own spiritual selves. The killers of the soul, who all too often happen to be the killers and consumers of animal flesh, are the ones who are uniquely qualified to sail through this human form of life without a single clue, without a single inkling that they are in fact immortal, eternal, living beings full of eternality, bliss, and knowledge. So this example is given by Prabhupada, how we can understand the difference between the three energies, the internal and the marginal and the external. The example is given of God, a man, as well as a doll. So the doll is inert. We all know that. The doll is made of material energy. A man is spirit inside of matter. He's a combination of material and spiritual energy. Therefore, he's marginal. So the doll is external. The man is marginal. And God consists entirely of spiritual energy. So the doll is external, and the doll is matter, internally, externally, inside and outside. The doll is matter. Man, internally is spirit, but externally he's matter. And God is the same inside and outside. Internally and externally, he's spirit, through and through. Advaitam. That's how we can understand the three energies: God, man, and a doll. So we should remember that being composed entirely of the internal potency, God is not conditioned or limited by any of the factors that limit us. Nothing is impossible for the omnipotent Lord. In fact, he can take the external energy, if he likes, and transform it into the internal energy. He can bring the entire spiritual nature within the material nature without the spiritual nature being affected by the material modes of goodness, passion, ignorance in any way. He can also do the reverse. He can take the material nature and he can transform it into spirit should he so desire. And the actual fact of the matter is, the bottom line is that the Lord actually has only one potency. The one potency of the Lord is the internal potency. But depending on for which purpose he uses it, it sometimes becomes known as external or marginal. But really it is all the internal potency. And the example is given of electricity. Electricity is one undifferentiated energy, but electricity can be used alternatively for different purposes. It can be used for heating. On a cold day, you can get central heating so that you feel comfortable in your house and not the pinching cold. On a hot day, such as that we're having now, July, August, in Utah, where the temperatures reach 90 and sometimes 100 degrees, you can use that same electricity for the AC. These appear to be contradictory results, heating and cooling, but electricity can be used for both apparently contradictory purposes. What's the condition? You need the expert handling of that energy by an electrician. So similarly, the Lord is the supreme electrician. He creates, he manages, he controls both the material, the marginal, and the spiritual energy. So he can use one potency to bring about a result in another potency or vice versa. We find this verse in the 2nd canto, 8th chapter, 23rd verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yat Atma Tantro Bhagavan Vikridati Atma Mayaya Visrija Va Yata Mayam Udashte Shakshivad Vibhu. The independent personality of Godhead enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency, and at the time of annihilation of this material world, gives them up to the external potency, and he remains a witness to it all. The conclusion is that Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the only independent person. By his internal potency, he performs pastimes like killing the Putana witch, killing the Aghasura demon, while sitting in the lap of his mother. And when it's time for him to leave the world, to finish up his pastimes and return to the material world, he arranges the killing, the annihilation of his family members, the Yadus, while himself remaining apart and unaffected by all of this. Galoka eva nivasati akalatma bhuto. Krishna is the witness of everything that's happening, and yet he has nothing to do with the cause and effects of this material world, being Atma Maya, being causeless. That means that the only truly independent person is Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Pariksit asks question after question after question to Sukadeva Goswami to understand from the lips of a realized person the extent of Krishna's detachment, the extent of Krishna's glories, and the extent of his qualities. You can never come to the end of those, but in the search, in the process of inquiry, giving questions and receiving the answers from the right source, one becomes purified of all material contaminations, all the darkness, all the confusion, all the defeatism, all the negativity which we've accumulated since millions and millions of births gradually becomes dissipated. Kechat Kevada Bhaktya Vasudeva Parayanaham. Just a few verses ago, we talked about Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Paragaram, Vasudeva Parayana. Vasudeva Parayana, by taking shelter of Vasudeva, chanting his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We open ourselves up to the knowledge of and love for Vasudeva, who is otherwise unattainable by material facilities. Research scholars, even up to the level of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Indra, and many other demigods, time and time and time again, by the exertion of their big demigod brains, they still cannot understand the extent of the qualities and pastimes of the Lord. We read again and again, Brahma Vimonha, Indra and Govardhan Hill, how the demigods are bewildered seeing the wonderful, creative, internal potency of the Lord. So what to speak of us? The demigods with their big brains cannot understand Krishna. Then why would we waste our time for trying to understand God through intellectual pursuits? There may be that inclination when we read or hear about Lord Brahma being the creator of the universe. Often I ask tour groups and school groups, what do you think, what is your definition? What is your idea of God? 80% of them will say God is the creator right off the bat. 20% of them will say God is the destroyer. So Lord Brahma creates the universe, and so according to those 80% who think God is the creator, for them Lord Brahma would be God because he creates the universe. So there might be that tendency to mistake Lord Brahma for God inasmuch as he fulfills most people's definition of God. He creates the universe. Who is God? Well, he's the one who creates the universe. Brahma creates the universe, therefore Brahma is God. But that would be a mistake. Brahma only creates this one universe, but Krishna creates millions and millions and millions and millions of universes. So when Narada Muni asked his father, Lord Brahma, this question, he got the answer from Lord Brahma that I am not an independent creator. True, I create the universe, but he who created millions and millions of universes created me. This is the question that Narada Muni put to his father. Yad Vigyano, Yad Adaro, Yad Parashtam, Yad Atmakaha, Eka Srijashi Bhutani, Bhutara Evatmana Mayaya. So Avatmana Maya means that Lord Brahma is within the laws of cause and effect. It's not Atma Maya, but it's Evatmana Maya. So Narada Muni asked Lord Brahma, what is the source of your knowledge? You created the universe, and so there's a tendency to equate you with God, but I see that you are worshiping some other. I see that you got your creative powers from some higher source. Narada asked, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? Under whom are you working? Whose name are you chanting? Who are you worshiping? What is your real position? You alone create all entities with material elements in this universe, but it seems that your powers are borrowed. Your plumes are not self-created. So Lord Brahma himself got the wherewithal to create the universe by creating severe tapasya, severe austerities for 1,000 years by the calculation of the demigods. And then as the fruit of his austerities, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared before him, greeted him, and blessed him with the fulfillment of his desires to be the creator of a universe. So although Lord Brahma is one of the great creators, great producers, a fecund procreator of an entire universe, the creator of the creators, the Atma Maya, the Lord who resides entirely within the internal potency, the only truly independent personality in all of the material and spiritual creations, that is Krishna. And Lord Brahma himself says, Ishvara Parama Krishna, of all the creators, of all the lords, of all the demigods, the Lord of lords, the self-created, supreme, imperishable, eternal, youthful, omniscient, omnipotent, supreme personality of God is none other than Krishna. Krishna has a body which is Sat, Chit, Ananda, Vigraha. There's no difference between the inside and the outside. Both inside and outside is full eternity, full knowledge, and full bliss. Anadir Adir Govinda. He pre-existed the sun, the moon, the stars. No created living being is able to understand the Lord by the exercise of his own powers of yoga or charity or philosophy. Only by the causeless mercy of the Lord, as it appears to us through the chain of disciplic succession and the pure devotees, can one come to know and to taste the nectar from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And over and above all of that, he is Sarva Karana Karanam. He appears in this material world due to his own sweet will, his own internal potency. And even though he's within the material world, he's never actually touched by the influence of matter, never contaminated. His words are eternal, fresh, and they are the lifeblood for the conditioned souls suffering repeated birth and death in this material world. We are just getting warmed up on our topic, but we'll have to carry over until tomorrow. Thank you so much for your emojis, for your enthusiastic interaction. Every time I called on you to respond, it was again like the 4th of July here at the end of February. It's such a joy to get together with you every morning, and in partnership we glorify the Lord, and we create such dynamics here on our Facebook Live page that I feel it's inevitable that others will happen upon us and also be touched by the devotion of the great acharyas and the great avatars of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thank you once again for being with us. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow on Transcendental Tuesday. Hope that you've had a great session together here on Motivational Monday. Until we meet again, don't forget to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let me just see. Gosh, I don't know how to do this without getting my big... No, I can't. If I try to scroll down, let's see. Okay, Kapilji. You know, the problem is when I reach for it, it's got this big hand, and then, you know, I know that that'll be the screenshot. That'll be what appears on the Facebook page. This big hand, and I don't know how to do otherwise. So anyway, if you joined us, thank you. I'll review your comments. If you have questions, I'll answer them. Thank you all for joining me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.